Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television with me, Frank Pereira. Natural disasters, also termed as acts of God, have caused immense damage to life and property in the recent past. Floods, earthquakes and droughts. India has been a victim to every form of destruction by nature. To some extent, the exploitation of natural resources by man is also a cause for such disasters. Several calamities have taken place one after another. Mumbai, Uttarakhand, Kashmir and Chennai, just to name a few. Is the lifestyle of the masses impacting the weather? How much are governments willing to give up on their development aspirations and do something concrete to protect the environment? That's what we are going to try and find out in this edition of The Big Picture. Let me begin by introducing my guests on the program. A.L. Ramanathan, Professor, School of Environmental Sciences, JNU. Santosh Mehrotra, Professor of Economics, JNU. Gauhar, Raza, Senior Scientist, and Himangshu, Senior Editor, The Economic Times. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me on the program. Professor, I'd like to begin with you. You know, so many disasters in the recent past. Most recently, of course, what's happening in Chennai right now. Our heart goes out to all of them. But is this just limited to being called a natural calamity, or is there more to it?
We all know that man has been causing climate change, and for that there is sufficient scientific evidence which has accumulated over the years, and we are bringing it upon ourselves. There is no question about it. Now, specific things happening, why did it happen in Chennai, why did it happen in Kashmir? One has to look at sort of specific, scientific determinants of that, which I'm sure my scientific colleagues will speak about. But there's no question about it that, historically, as an economist, I can say, as a development economist, I can say, there's been seen a relationship between poverty, population growth, and environment. Now, we are a country which is the second largest population in the world. We cannot maintain growth, economic growth, in a way that the rich countries have grown, because if we went that route, you need 4 planets to sustain the population that we currently have.
Yes.
So that's obviously a route that we cannot go. And it's absolutely critical that we know that the climate change effects on the poorer countries, especially in South Asia and in Sub-Saharan Africa, have been the greatest and will continue to be the greatest. So we might not have been part of the problem. We certainly have to begin to become a part of the solution. And hence, the climate change talks in Paris are absolutely critical to our future as a country, and especially for the poorest people in our country.
We'll talk about the Paris talks in detail in just a bit. But before that, Mr. Raza, I'd like to speak to you and ask you, about why this is happening in India. Is India, more susceptible, say, to some of the other places around the world? And, we've seen unseasonal rains. We've seen the Rabi crop being completely destroyed in March. So what can we attribute some of these things to?
See, I think natural calamities have been happening since I have gained consciousness. So it's not something new that's happening to India. What has added to the problem is what the professor was pointing out, that extreme weather, extreme kind of calamities are taking place because of environmental change. Anthropogenic activities, it's now almost proved that they are causing certain changes which are probably going to be irreversible if we do not wake up right now. But the point is that we are not waking up. The thing is that there is an area where war is going on continuously for the past 30, 40 years. There are hot spots where we just do not stop trampling upon the environment. Now, that is one area or one issue which is not on the platter as far as this whole discussion is going on. We do not blame war for degradation of environment. I think that has to be brought on the platter. Now, you have countries which have trampled upon other countries for past 200, 250 years, regularly, repeatedly, consciously, and that has created a model of development which again was referred to in the discussion. That model of development cannot be a sustainable model. It cannot be sustainable model because today you can't trample upon other countries the way you were trampling upon 100 years back or 50 years back. Therefore, this model has to be completely probably changed. New thoughts have to be given how we are going to sustain humanity on this planet Earth. Not only humanity, life on this planet Earth. The third point is that all those forces, right from multinationals to Indian companies or national companies anywhere in the world to the last man, you can't put all of them in a basket, shake the basket and say all of you are responsible for degradation. You have to fix the responsibility, who has done what, and then take necessary action. Those who are using large amount of what is known as energy, and energy encompasses all kinds of consumptions, are generating what is known as huge amount of entropy. By definition, physics tells you, simple physics tells you, that once you are consuming huge amount of energy, then you are also generating huge amount of entropy, which is chaos.
Yes.
Now, this chaos is going to result into a situation where the last man who is not creating chaos is also affected. The model has to be challenged repeatedly.
The model has to be changed. Professor Ramanathan, of course, we all agree that the model needs to be changed, but it does not augur too well with the economies, does it? Because the governments, how serious are they really to try and change some of these models and actually take action on the ground?
The government will, they are trying to do whatever possible they are want to do, but the thing is that actually the temperature of this is rising, global temperature is rising, and also this year if you see that the ENSO and El Nino effect is there in that region, and that is temperature rise actually lead to a lot of latent heat and energy conservations, and a lot of moisture will be created. And this El Nino effect, generally what happens is that if there is no El Nino effect, this northeast monsoon will be dispersed in the middle of this Bay of Bengal, but now it is in the southern part of that one. So that is also that induced that intensity of rainfall in that one, and this the whatever the model we are developing to understand the climate extremes or the extreme events in these things, these are all has to be refined, and whatever we are doing that, it also point out to the climate extremes added to this disaster in these regions. And further, that is man-made is another important factor for this, because whatever the natural water bodies and drainage systems in the coastal and the Chennai, for example, if you see that one, even in the other disasters if you see from that, all of them are modified or altered or reduced. That will accelerate the impact on this, and also as he pointed out, the economy, the poorest of the poor is going to affect more than the other group of sectors.
You know, Himangshu, what's the point really being, good environment and the economy don't go hand in hand, and we've seen this being repeated time and again. So do you see governments actually taking that concrete step, maybe, you know, saying that, okay, we'll put aside development for now and concentrate on the environment?
Well, globally, there is a growing concern, but I don't think we have crossed that threshold limit where there will be serious action. Because, you know, if you speak to the top people in the government, off record, they'll tell you that what these Western countries want is we should have a deal where the Western companies will be able to sell costly products to the developing, the needy countries, and then save the environment. So that mindset has to change. The other thing is, you know, there is some debate within the scientific community, and there's the issue of how people agree, how much is climate changing due to human effort, whether, you know, there's a scientific way in which there's a formula which can extrapolate that by this year temperature will rise by 2 degrees or 1 degree. Now that aside, you know, there are certain things which has no dispute that, as you know, some of the distinguished speakers have already mentioned, that the frequency of extreme precipitation events is on the rise. There is no doubt about that. It has happened. Frequency of extreme events in the past have been tabulated. So if you look at the past 10, 15 or maybe 20 years, the number of extreme events is much more than that frequency in the past. In India, we just saw Kashmir. In 2010, Ladakh had an incredible amount of rainfall in a desert region. Pakistan had a devastating flood in 2010. So all this is happening. What might have happened in the south, there's been some meteorological observation that in El Nino years, many Bay of Bengal weather systems tend to come towards the Indian peninsula. So all this is happening. It has to be the #1 priority for a country like India, that we have to set our environment right. It may be the fault
at the cost of development, because majority of India is poor at the moment.
I don't believe that you can set your development agenda going only at the cost of the environment, or environment can be protected only at the cost of development. I do not agree with that.
They're two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
Yeah, but it is not an either-or kind of a situation,
So, but the moment you define development in a particular manner, then it becomes either-or. But if you define or redefine the development model, then it will not be environment versus model, this model.
For example, in a remote area, it might be better to have a solar plant than a, a conventional fuel-based plant. So, I agree with you completely.
But that also takes a lot of money, doesn't it, Mr. Raza? Because, you try and get all these things in place because you're already trying to run on what you have and what the kind of infrastructure that you already have. The moment you change the model, the moment you get in new things, then that also costs you money.
The models have changed. Over a period of time, history shows us that the models of development have changed. So there's nothing very stark about it that model cannot be changed, right? We have industrial revolution. Pre-industrial revolution was an era which was completely different. Now that paradigm shift has to come from scientific community, political community, thinkers, philosophers, putting their efforts together to think of something new that is sustainable, that sustains the globe, that sustains the life, that sustains economy, that sustains the poorest of the poor. In this kind of condition where poor communities, especially those areas where tribal population still exists, they are on the worst receiving end of whatever is happening. This model crushes them further with a very iron fist. If you do not change that model, if you do not think, then the problem cannot be resolved by one big international meet or two conferences. No.
Professor, I know you've been wanting to say something. I'll just come back to you in just a bit. Yeah, Himangshu.
I just wanted to add to that. I agree that in certain cases, to cut down pollution and environmental costs, there will be expenditure involved. But there's so many areas, particularly in a country like India. For example, if you are destroying a mangrove to build some commercial plots, that's not development. If in a city there are lakes and wide areas, it is not development to destroy them and have multi-story buildings, which some politician and builder will sell. So, these are things which can be done without coming in the way of development. So, I think there's miles to go within India to do a lot for the environment, to do responsible development without incurring a cost, which people talk about.
Frank, what I wanted to emphasize is that, let me take an example of the way we use water resources, groundwater in particular, to illustrate the issue of the trade-off between development and environment. And then I'll give you another example with sort of the tanning and leather industry. As far as groundwater is concerned, we have tended to overuse groundwater in order to irrigate our crops. Now, which crops have we encouraged? Through our pricing mechanism. The crops which we've encouraged are wheat and rice. Now, relatively speaking, wheat, rice and sugarcane in particular we've encouraged are highly water intensive. And in those regions where these are grown, not only has sort of surface water been used, but groundwater has been used and excessively used. Secondly, we've gone a route of sort of employing a technology, particularly for excess fertilizer use, not reasonable fertilizer use, but excessive fertilizer use by subsidizing fertilizer in an extremely distortionary manner, which has resulted in even further groundwater. And at the same time, your productivity is not rising. So this is, and why is all this happening? Because, there's a certain politically vocal group of, Punjabi and Haryani farmers who have been pushing a certain price policy and a subsidy policy which has enabled this to happen. We cannot allow this pattern of development to continue when you could have, for instance, gone for more continued production of millets or increased production of pulses. Now, these use less water, they are nutritious foods. By pricing rice and wheat extremely low, and rather sort of giving minimum support prices and so on, and then supplying it through the public distribution system, what we've done is to bias the production, the decision of the farmer in favor of these, as opposed to millet, as opposed to the dals. Yeah. So what is happening? The dal prices have gone through the roof. This is an unacceptable situation. It's our fault that this situation has arisen in respect of groundwater at the cost of yields not rising. So you're not getting development and you're getting the environmental degradation.
But the moot question being, what corrective measures need to be taken?
No, I've already implied that. The corrective measures are...
The pricing policy is one.
Yeah, the pricing policy is to be corrected in respect of dal, in respect of millets, and many other things have to happen. It's not just about pricing. But I'm just telling you that, we've created the trade-off between environment and development by our own policies, which we could have avoided.
Indeed. Indeed. Talking about policies, I think Professor Ramanathan wants to make a point. Yeah, go ahead.
No, this policy is that, as he has pointed out, the ecosystem services, that is what we are ignoring in most of the natural disasters accelerated by the ecosystem services, because all the ground has a capacity to infiltrate the water and store it and then supply to you when you needed it. And also there is a natural drainage systems which try to, where is the energy is more in the natural system, that it will be absorbed and then goes to the sea. So we are blocking the natural network of these systems, and also we have an impermeable layer developed throughout the system, like in Chennai or in anywhere, that you develop an impermeable layer where the water will not soak into the system and it overflows that one. So this is, and also you pointed out that like mangroves and other floodplains, lakes for example. So they have to be, all are now it is reduced to 10% or 20% of that one. So all the holding capacity of the water, which traditionally what our natural, earlier our forefathers has done it, that we store the water and then use it for whenever there is a flood, they store the water and use it. That system is completely collapsed. That means we have to revive the model to understand that development with a sustainable environment. That means your system should reinforce the natural ecosystems, and you can, because 100% you cannot destroy any natural system. That is a sustainability. You should have some 20% if you destroy for development, 80% you conserve, then this type of calamity will be avoided. So the model should be shifted towards that. That's what I feel.
Indeed, Mr. Raza, it's very simple, isn't it? I mean, there are several solutions. People have done it. One-off people, even in rural areas, the poorest of poor people, have actually come out with several of these models and done something to try and protect the environment. Why can't this be implemented on a large scale? Is it difficult, or is it just the fact that we are lacking the will?
Before I answer your question, I want to make another point. Scientific community has done it. They have probed. They have developed technologies which are environment friendly. They've also warned, pressed the alarm button across the countries. Media has also done a good job. That they have taken this consciousness that environment is going to be trampled upon, it's going to be irreversible change, etc., was not there 20, 30 years back. today we are doing this discussion, we are holding this discussion, it's because media has become sensitive to it and have made people sensitive to it. But granted that that threshold has not come where people rising, you can see, around these issues. That has not happened, at least in India and developing countries. Developed countries, yes, Greenpeace, etc., etc., they're very strong. What I want to say is that the political community across the world, the economic leaders, they have not done their job properly. That is where the problem lies. Now, if they do not wake up, and if somebody is going to keep on milking the cow that this Mother Earth is, then it's going to be a problem and we will not be able to find solution. Because they are strong, they control a lot of things, and therefore the problem is going to persist. Who is going to pressurize these two sections across the countries, nations? Because environment does not know national boundaries.
Indeed.
If you bomb Syria, then it's going to affect the entire globe. If you have a bomb which is dropped in Hiroshima, you have effects still today. So it is international problem. International pressure has to be created, and this pressure only can give birth to a paradigm shift. Cannot happen. Ask your scientific community, those who are innovators, ask the technologists, give them the mandate to reverse the paradigm that we have been following. They'll do it. I'm very confident that we are at a developmental stage where humanity can provide solutions.
You know, talking about the international community, there are some very crucial, there is a round of talks taking place in Paris.
20% of scientists are even now engaged in armament research.
Indeed.
Huge amount of funds are being given to the areas which are only destructive, which are the dead end. You produce one missile, it's dead the moment a more effective missile is produced tomorrow.
Indeed. Indeed.
So you sink the money there, which is dead end. Reverse the process. That is what my plea would be.
2 minutes on the program, so I'm going to try and shift focus to the Paris talks and talk about the Paris talks now before we end the program, because very crucial talks that are going on in Paris. Professor, would you say that it's going in the right direction, or at least it's a start in the right direction, because assurances are being made by several world leaders. They've been made in the past. Those assurances have not been kept. What's to say that the same is not going to happen again?
Well, I just want to make 2 points here because time is limited. One is that we have the following paradox, that the United States generates about 30% of its energy on the basis of coal. And it's the United States which is telling a country like India that we should reduce our dependence on coal. Well, how is that humanly possible when 25%, at least 25% of our population doesn't even have access to electricity, while in the United States, just Times Square in New York City uses in a night more electricity than all of Zimbabwe does in a whole year.
Yes.
So first we've got to get that balance right, so that common and differentiated responsibility, that principle we cannot possibly budge from. The other thing is that the international community has simply not come good on the green climate fund. The big fund, which was supposed to receive $100 billion, has barely received $6 billion in all this time. So are the rich countries going to come good on that? These are the
limited time, Professor. So I'm going to give Himangshu as well as Professor Ramanathan to final comments very quickly.
See, if you look at Paris, and to put it in layman's term, there are two sides to it. One is the recognition that this is a serious problem, and there I think globally we've taken many good steps forward. There's nobody disputing the fact that this is a problem and we need to act. The area of dispute is how to act and how to fund it.
Indeed.
Where India has a very strong argument that, historically since the Industrial Revolution, we probably contributed 2-point-something%, China has contributed 10%, and, the North America, Europe, Russia and all have contributed 50% of the carbon. And that if climate is changing, it is because of not what is happening today, but because what's happening over 200 years or so. So that is there. And my point is that India's position there is very correct, as the professor also just said, that you have greater responsibility. But that apart, we got to do something for what's happening in pollution in India.
Indeed,
Independent
And
of
Professor
what we
Ramanathan,
argue
very
there.
quickly, in just 10 seconds, close the show for us, please.
Yeah, I agree with him. The main thing is that the global responsibility is everybody, because everybody is contributing and we are in the process of contributing. So it is the responsibility, the global responsibility, and as he pointed out, we have to take stock of our situation and tell that we have to clean our system also, because we cannot live forever like this, and we should clean our system and we have to conserve our environment.
Yeah, it has to start with us. And
If
on
that's
that
first,
note,
yeah.
on that note, we'll call it a
Yeah.
wrap on this discussion. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with me on this program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.